now streaming live to Facebook's Labor Front page. My name is Glenn Coggy. I am the host of the Labor Front Table Talk series. And tonight we are honored to have Joshua Shipp, candidate for United States Senate in the state of Missouri. And we're going to talk to Joshua about why he's running, his background, his experience, and then some of the issues that are important to him. With that said, Joshua, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to you right now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you, Labor Pro, for having me on this platform. I really appreciate it. Like I said, my name is Josh Shipp. I'm running for Missouri Senate in the state of Missouri. And I want to reach out and let you all know that what I'm trying to do and the main core of everything is increasing the quality of life for every individual, be it our liberties, be it what we consider rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We need to secure some of these and reform some of these systems that are in place in order for us to reach the pinnacle of our fruitions. I have a background in Master of Science degree, where I received that. And also I ran for Congress in District 1 in St. Louis back in 2018. Um, Together we stand, it's too much division. Let's see if we can come to a common cause and work forward.
Great. That's great. Master's degree in science. What do you do with your master's degree in science?
Exercise physiology, clinical studies, and physiology.
Oh, nice. Good deal. That's awesome. You know, we were talking a little bit
Actually,
before.
I'm currently here right now. I'm on lunch break.
Caught you in uniform, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's very good. And you know, I bet you're a good coach, good teacher, and you able to really put your stuff out there. And anyway, you know, we were talking a little bit before we went live, and there's some of the issues that's a little bit touchy. It's hard for you to get traction and make your voice heard throughout the state without spending a lot of money. And there's candidates out there that we've got an establishment candidate that's been picked by the Democratic Party. We've got another candidate that kind of came out of nowhere, but he's really doing well and he's stirring up a lot of people and gaining a lot of popularity. How do we get your voice out? Because you'd said you don't take money from PACs or any of that. So why don't you tell us how that works?
Well, see, with the new generation, millennials, Gen Z, what we are doing is more of a independent kind of approach to the traditional playbook of politics. Instead of trying to run up money, 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 and take money from people that really need it, especially in a time of pandemic and time of recovery, we're just doing more on online social media as far as TikTok and social media to get more involved, get discussions sparked within the community. Because once you create a community, get more discussions going, more people can be heard and ideas can be created in order to fight a lot of these systems that are in place, because you get real world testimonies instead of special interest lobbyists funding your corporation with quid pro quo agendas. And so what we need to do is just what the United States is supposed to be, a united front, and we need to unite as one. And with the technology we have now, it makes it actually way easier than it did in the past in order to get the word out, in order to get collaborations, than the old career playbook.
Right. No, I think that's excellent. And it's much needed. It's a way to reach out to a lot of people, but
Mhm.
it's also a way to encourage the Gen X, the younger generations, to get more active and get involved. They see you do it.
Exactly.
I think it's great. Ray Reed came on Table Talk a couple of months ago. He's a dynamic young man. I wish him nothing but the best. And it's important for you guys to be able to find ways to get your voice out. And I really take a lot of joy in getting to meet and talk with and interact with the younger crowd. Like you and I were talking before, it's past time that guys like me pass the baton on to the younger generation. We need new ideas. We need new input, and we need to go in a new direction. We can't keep doing things the way that we've done it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
your
Yeah.
progressive voice is needed. So,
Definitely.
so what are your goals for the state of Missouri when you become a U.S. senator?
So I have a long laundry list of things that I want to do, but we're going to try to condense it down to the kind of top three, top four. And number one, of course, is criminal justice reform. I know it's no stranger, especially where I come from in St. Louis. We're not a stranger to the top five, top three list in the most dangerous cities in America. And also with police killings with that made world news, not just national news. And so when we take a look into small things like Ferguson's police department, and you see a corruption within that sector, and just other things within the sector of policing, court level reform and legislative reform that we could implement in order to lessen the trigger happy response and the fear based training, one, of police officers, and also things to hold them accountable, such as community based organizations. But that's just a small thing under the criminal justice reform. I'm also with healthcare and drug pricing reform because we're paying absorbent amounts of money just for drug pricing, and the pharmaceutical companies with their patents are creating monopolies, which are controlling drug prices, and also with the negotiation of drug prices with pharmacy benefit managers, are not going at the interest of the citizens. So performing things like this, like having Medicare negotiate drug prices, and universal basic income, universal healthcare, are ways that we can reform that system. And the last one, of course, is the only way I really see other than those is to unite and ignite the economy, and it's with infrastructure, green renewable infrastructure, and invested in infrastructure into our economy, into Missouri. We have the veins of the nation, with the rivers we have going through Missouri, and also just with the front, we need to become more of a first world technology nation. And anytime, if you look back in history, anytime a country invests in its infrastructure, you're going to get jobs, you're going to get people increasing their quality of life, and you want to increase the economy.
I couldn't agree with you more. Everything that you said. One of the things that I find frustrating, I've been in manufacturing for the last 25 years. Before that, I was in construction for almost 20. And I think one of the most frustrating things is St. Louis used to be number 2 in auto manufacturing behind Detroit. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And we had a plant.
Yeah, my uncle worked out there at the Chrysler plant.
Did he? What was your uncle's last name?
My uncle's last name is Johnson. It was Charles Johnson. I don't know if you knew him or not.
I don't know. We had 2 plants, and between the 2 of them, there were about 7 or 8,000 people. So there was small.
Yeah.
The thing is, yeah, the point is, at one time we had the Hazelwood, the Ford assembly plant in Hazelwood. That's just a few miles from Ferguson, where Michael Brown was killed.
Yeah.
And you think about the loss of good jobs, good paying jobs within these areas. And the kids that used to be able to look forward to getting out of high school, going to work at Ford, like their mom, their dad, their aunt, their uncle, working for 30 years after high school, retiring in their early 50s with a good pension and good health care.
Yeah, it was with a pension.
Yeah, and those jobs are gone. I'm at General Motors now since 2014. I do not get a pension from General Motors when I retire because of some contract language and the concessions that we made to get General Motors out of bankruptcy and save the company as well. But back to the point, we have to find a way to give these kids hope. It doesn't matter if they're from North St. Louis or out in Fenton or down in Kennett, Missouri. I was doing some organizing for the Service Employees Union, and Kennett was in my area that I was working. And they used to have a pretty good sized Emerson factory where they made electric motors. And that closed down and moved to Mexico, and that created a huge vacuum in rural Missouri. So trade bills is one of the things that's important to me in manufacturing. And real quick, not to get too far off into the weeds, you brought something up about patents and technology. One of the things that really frustrates me is when you look at what our tax dollars have created through research and development, where companies and corporations are writing that off, then they develop something, and instead of manufacturing it here, where the idea came and the development and everything went, they give it to a third world country where they're paying children pennies an hour to do the work that we once done.
Or they just buy back their stock.
Exactly. Yes, sir. That's exactly right. So what are your thoughts on trying to clamp down on some of these trade bills or penalizing companies or corporations that move overseas and don't honor good work ethics or environmental?
Yes, especially with the subsidies that these huge corporations are getting. I would say more reform, though, like if you're not going to get a certain percentage to invest in research and development and it be shown you have to actually have it on file and or invest it into your employees, then you have to reduce the amount of subsidies we're starting to give in order to try to reduce that effect. But also, if you're creating more jobs abroad, I don't think you deserve, in order to receive the amount of subsidies that United States government is getting, because we can use that elsewhere. So definitely, I would say place more uh, fees, if not fees, reduce how much subsidies that we're giving to these organizations that's just not giving back to the workers and or for research and development. And also, as far as when they do their buyback, stock buybacks, we should be able to tax that, especially if it's at a high percentage of the subsidies that we're giving. Those stock buybacks should be taxed so it can go back into the hands of the workers or into our infrastructure.
That sounds good. I'd like to see that happen. Um, but one of the things that we would talked about is the lobbyist in the situation with dark money and PAC money in our
Yes,
politics. And I know that was
huge.
something that when we were talking about that, buddy, you lit up like a firecracker. Why don't you give us your position on what your thoughts are regarding that?
Well, see, let's start as far as the interests of the people. So the citizen, and I think it was a Purdue study that looked at and saw how congressmen in the Senate was voting, and if the public agreed on it 100% or if they didn't agree on it all. It didn't matter. It still had around like a 20% chance of getting passed because the Senate and Congress are not really serving the interests of the people for the most part. It's serving the interests of lobbyists and corporate greed. So money is the huge evil that's really corrupting our political democracy or our constitutional republic, however you want to look at it. But it is a big hindrance as far as getting the interests of the people's progression and stuff passed. And so what I plan to do is what I want to do is things like term limits and also reduce the effect of big super PACs and how they're able to get money like citizens, what is this? What is it? The free
Citizens,
access.
Citizens
Yeah,
United,
yeah, Citizens United. Yeah.
right?
That's more of a bill that I definitely would want to look at and reduce its effect on how much money and how money affects it. Because you can, super PACs can spend millions and millions and millions of dollars drowning out information, doing fake news, and really doing propaganda. And that's really dividing and hurting the nation. So we need to find ways to curtail that.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that you said. You and I had a little conversation about the term limits, but
Yeah.
that's just a differences of opinion. But one of the things about the money in politics compared to, okay, so that's like old establishment, right? Big money to
Mhm.
go out. You're running a TikTok, you're running Instagram, you're running Twitter, you're running Facebook. I don't know what other social platforms are out there. I'm still learning some of the stuff myself. But by having the ability to do that, you're reaching out to tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people
Mhm.
with your message, and you can focus your message on whatever information that you want and build a positive political
Yes.
movement through social media. And that is
Mhm.
a great counterbalance to the old establishment money that has been infiltrating our politics for
Mhm.
decades, since the beginning of politics.
And
So I think
also,
great.
and another thing that I just wanted to add on to that, because of like the interest that we're not getting stuff like the filibuster and how they're using it to extreme measures, things like just out of the box ideas as of to create a more of a reformative democracy is when once a year, as far as a general election that we were talking about should go, citizens should be able to vote on one bill that Congress can't pass or is in deadlock or is unfairly filibustered to so the voices of the people can be heard more. Not saying that they're voting on all bills. It's just one thing that just they can't get past for like 2, 4, 5 years and just been sitting there deadlocked. And we're paying them money. Okay. They need to do their job. And so if they can do their job, I feel like this is another a democratic approach that we can use in order to get at least the voices heard and people back into the political spectrum because a lot of people feel like, well, my voice doesn't matter. So why should I care? Why should I go out and vote? And if you give them an incentive which tell you the truth, this is an incentive-based society right now. People will take heed and get more interactive into the democracy.
You know, a couple of the points that you brought up, I think most especially is the people's voice and their ability to vote on one specific bill. That only goes so far. And I'll tell you
Mhm,
why I'm a little bit skeptical, not of your proposal. I don't mind that at
mhm.
all, but the state of Missouri.
Yeah,
The Republicans passed right to work. Governor Greitens signed it into law. It became a law. We gathered, had ballot initiatives and gathered signatures to get it on the ballot and bring it up to a vote to the people. It came up in 2018 as Proposition A, and it was overwhelmingly defeated in the state of Missouri by the citizens. It was a citizens' veto of the governor's signature and the Republicans' legislation. What did they do? They turned right around, and not only did they responsor right to work, but then they put legislation out to make the signature collection process harder, the ballot initiative process harder. I'm hoping to get um, Richard Von Glahn on from Jobs with Justice so that we can have a conversation about what's going on in the state
yeah.
legislature on ballot initiatives and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So the will of the people is only going to go so far. The only thing we can really do is vote them out. And it's going to
Yeah,
be voting for strong candidates with a loud voice like yourself.
yes, definitely. And it just have to get people together too. There's so much division. And once and a lot of I'm not trying to talk about the other candidates or anything, but I hear a lot of just, blame and stuff like this when it's really we all want the same thing. We all want to increase our quality of life. And if once we come to more of a common ground, which yes, you matter, we matter, we're brothers and sisters, we're neighbors, that's when a collaborative effect would happen and we can take over, power back with the citizens' interests.
Right. One of the things that we have not had a chance to talk about yet, even in our pre-game locker room talk,
Yeah.
uh, I'll put it into your terms. But anyway, what's your thoughts on better education policy for the state of Missouri and some of the nonsense that's going on with the push to privatize public education?
Okay, so first thing is how we fund education and how gerrymandering has had a huge effect on how the property taxes, especially like that, give schools resources and access to education. For one, I feel like school period up until trade school for one should be free to me. Trade schools definitely should be funded because we're past this industrial size world. We can just get a job at a factory, like you were saying earlier, and just live on with our pension. We need a skill, and so we need to educate the citizens from more of an industrial mindset to a creative mindset. So with things like how Finland does, not giving homework in order to boost more creativity, and also shortening schools from 5 days to 4 days so families can be more together and creating an environment where we don't have to work 50, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, where we can come home and spend time with our kids and actually teach them, raise them properly so the police don't have to raise them. And so having more time with your kids to raise them is huge as far as their education and maturation within school. As far as the private sector, I feel like that's just a way to divide um, your neighbors. And a lot of people are disenfranchised and aren't able to, for one, even afford or be able to be placed in those areas because of lack of resource and lack of education or teachers that's willing to even be in those sectors. So we need to reform the way we finance schools and also make it to where food and cost of resources aren't a huge hurdle, especially for our kids. They're all the future.
Oh, absolutely. They are our future. And we do not pay enough attention to how we fund our schools. We don't
Yeah.
pay enough attention to what we pay our teachers. We're
Hmm.
49th or 50th in the entire country on
Oh yeah.
teacher pay. And I don't know what happened to the idea that you get what you pay for, but apparently
Hmm.
it's lost on our Missouri legislature. I realize that's not something that you would handle as a US senator, but you would have a voice and you would have some influence when you would talk about this. If you went out
Yes.
you could use your voice in a bully pulpit as a United States senator to push to make sure our public schools remain public, that we
Yeah.
find ways to fund our teachers, that we have lunch programs that all the children are allowed to eat and go home with a full tummy. But
Mhm.
I just think that's something that's really important that we have not had a
Really
chance to
important.
talk about. And then as far as the book bans and burnings and CRT and all that other stuff is just,
Oh,
that's just crazy. It is. I mean,
that's I really think that's a distraction from what really matters. I think this just this smoke that people are trying to push so they can slip under and pass, these private sector bills and get people more divided about critical race theory that's not even being taught the way they think it is, when we really have big, huge issues going.
right. Well, the Republicans have really done a great job at controlling a narrative and
Yeah,
using that using that narrative to paint the Democratic Party with a certain brush, to paint organized labor with a certain brush. There's many parallels that we face, and the same with the African American community.
yeah,
They that started back with Ronald Reagan talking about the welfare mom and the 7 kids in the Cadillac. And they
mhm,
have painted that brush, used that brush to paint for a generation, a
yeah,
solid generation. And it's going to take people like you stepping up with your voice, using your platform, using your ability to step out on social media to break that brush and
exactly.
and show the
And that
way, show the
cycle,
world what you're about, man. I think it's
exactly.
awesome. No, I like I told you earlier, I had Ray Reed on. He's a dynamic young man. I wish him nothing but the best. We have got to reach out to this younger generation. We have got to give
Yes,
you guys a voice,
huge.
and we
Yes,
can't be afraid. I got nothing to fear.
especially with climate change, Social Security. We're going to be left with the bill.
Yeah, you are.
This huge Social Security bubble, what they're calling, I think they call it a silver wave or something that's about to hit. And it's like, where is all they going to fall on? The next big generation, which is millennials and Gen Zs, that's going
I
to be
don't know, but
left with the bill.
I can tell you, I'm part of that silver wave. I'm starting to wash up on the shore here pretty soon. So I'm counting on you, pal, to make sure you take care of all us old timers.
Exactly. And that's why we try to have to reform systems in order to get there,
Right. Well, Josh,
especially with things like drug prices and stuff for elderly care. Just a lot for quality of life.
oh, absolutely. It doesn't matter if you get old if you can't really enjoy the quality of life when you do
Exactly.
get old. And you're right
Exactly.
there on the forefront, taking on these battles and these challenges, and I appreciate it.
Oh,
One
thank
thing,
you.
no, it's as sincere as I can be. One thing I like to do is I play a thing called King for a Day, and
Okay.
you're going to be the king of Missouri, and whatever rules you put out are going to have to be abided by the citizens of Missouri, and you can make these rules whatever you want. Um, and if you were the king, what would be the first thing you would do for the state that will be under your kingdom?
I would want to make the state fully renewable and energy dependent. I feel like Missouri has the resources and the energy know-how in order to capitalize on that. Also, I will basically make it where public transportation is a more convenient way to travel than using cars and emissions and stuff. So really, really trying to reduce our emissions carbon footprint. So I would make a lot of things where easier, where hey, the public transit or subsidies as far as solar panels and stuff can be better received and promoted within Missouri. But as far as a king approach and demanding, uh, I never really thought of myself as a king type thing, but I would demand police departments and police unions be vetted by a federal community review board with people actually living in that community. Because people living in a community know more about a federal police officer or a county cop, and they can hold people accountable, especially if somebody down the street has cerebral palsy, which I've worked with plenty of cerebral palsy patients in pediatrics before and work with them, certain things can trigger them or stuff like that. And so that police officer may not know that, but if they are able to, have a intermediate or another number that's not life threatening, in the form of a community review board, This way, we can hold people accountable for misconduct, hold police with insurance and make sure their insurance is up to date and stuff like that. And I feel like that right there can start bridging the gap between the police and the community because we have an intermediary in the middle working, not just one side over here, one side over here. It's like, let's bring us together, let's get understanding, and let's do more training. And so I'll demand a community review department.
Right. I think that'd be great. And I think it's new. I think it's needed. I don't, you can't turn the news on without hearing about um, some young African American male or female being shot by the police and there's no accountability. And
Yeah,
it's not a us against the cops thing. My son was a cop for I think 7 years.
it's a
Uh,
training thing.
it is. It's a training thing. It's giving people the ideal ability to understand aggressive and malicious versus ignorant or someone with a mental issue that isn't understanding or is deaf or whatever the case may be.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
it's because they do a fraction of de-escalation tactics compared to weapons and combat tactics. So we need to up the hours that we're doing at de-escalation rather than all these hours of shooting and taking people down.
right,
If that's all you're really teaching and drilling your head, that's probably the first thing you're gonna do. This trigger happy, shoot first, ask questions later approach. So it's definitely fall in the trend. I'm not saying police are inherently bad. It's just training.
no, I agree. I think that's a good way to put it and a good way to look at it. And I think it's really is something that's needed. I'm trying to remember what city I read that was taken and having a social workers. The police departments were hiring social workers and sending them out with the police on
Mhm.
learning how to de-escalate, whether it's a,
That's
go ahead.
Oh no, no. So that's a good idea.
Right, whether it's a
That's a good.
domestic dispute or something like
Mhm.
that, people that know how to talk the other
Yeah,
side down, how to talk to people and treat them. Sometimes it's just somebody having a horrible shit day.
yeah,
Pardon
yeah.
the
We're
language.
human.
Yeah,
And that's what I think. You have to come back down to looking, seeing each other as humans instead of a potential threat or somebody that's out to get you. It's like people are human first, and we all go through things, and we need to look at each other as brothers and sisters because we're United States. It's not the divided states, and so if we don't
yeah,
help each other out, then it's easy to get infiltrated from within.
right. I don't want to talk about any of the other candidates on the Democratic side, but Republican Congressman Roy Blunt is leaving. He's decided to retire, and I don't wish any ill on anyone, regardless of who they are or what political party. But I can't really think of any legislation that has been put out by Blunt that has really benefited the state of Missouri or our workers. Wentzville's going strong where I work at the General Motors plant. We're doing great, but we have lost 3 auto assembly plants in the last 15 years. Those are a lot of really good jobs that we've lost. And a lot of it comes down to bad trade bills, which before anybody barks at me about NAFTA, I wish Bill Clinton would have done something besides NAFTA that day. But
Mhm.
it's there, and it's been the law now for almost 30 years. Um, President Trump, to his credit, was going to renegotiate NAFTA, and they did move some numbers and stuff around, but it really hasn't brought the positive effect that anybody was hoping for. We need to find a way to get some legislation together that's going to benefit manufacturing in the United States. You were talking about solar, you were talking about clean energy. Those are great avenues and places to invest to create good jobs and good paying
Yeah,
jobs for everybody.
big time.
Yeah. So, is there anything? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. I update have is you can find me at Josh Shipp for Senate on all my socials. But the actual website, other than my socials, let me get it for you real quick. It's only one ship wixsite.com/Josh Shipp for Senate.
All right, I
And you
will
can
look.
also find me on Facebook at Josh Shipp for Congress, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials, JShip314 or Josh Shipp for Senate.
All right. Well, we'll look you up and we'll get this video finished up, and I'll get it turned around and we'll get it on YouTube so that you can post it. Josh, thanks for coming on, man. You got a bright future ahead of you. I really dig your energy and your
Awesome.
the way you're approaching everything. You brought up some really good points, and you touched on some points that some of the other candidates that I've talked to have not really brought up. But I think the most
Awesome.
inspiring thing for me is the youth movement that's coming up. It's great.
Yes.
More power to
Awesome.
you, my
Thank you
friend.
very much.
I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, I look forward to meeting you and thank you as well. Have a
Yes,
wonderful evening.
yes, sir, Josh. Thank you too, bud. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.